I'm Ben Davis, 40 years old, married to Kathy Davis for 16 years, and we have a 14-year-old daughter named Maria. Recently, I received a text and a picture that made me question whether Kathy and I would make it to our 19th anniversary. I work as a salesman for a local electrical supply company, covering a 45-county area. My job often requires overnight stays, as I visit factories and job sites. I'm good at what I do, probably because I started out as a maintenance electrician, which gave me a solid foundation. At 6 feet 0 inches and 180 pounds, I'm in decent shape. Outside of work, I'm always tinkering with PLCs and robotic controls, and I've even managed to sell a few of my programs. My bosses have been supportive, as sales of robotic controllers typically rise when I sell one of my programs. I've been putting the extra income into a separate account at a different bank, which I've dubbed my secret stash. It's not quite where I want it to be yet, but my goal is to retire by 50 if I can make it happen. I was on a job site, staying overnight to troubleshoot a controller issue for one of our customers. Around 4 p.m., I got a notification for a text message. I couldn't check it right away, so I decided to wait until I was at dinner. When I finally looked at it, I was stunned. It was a naked selfie of my wife, Kathy, with a message attached, "Roger, my love machine. My whole husband is going to be gone tonight, and the darling little mistake is at a sleepover, so come on over and do it again." That moment marked the end of my marriage and the start of what would become my revenge. I quickly forwarded the text to my email so I wouldn't lose it. After dinner, I called my customer, explained that something had come up and I needed to head home, promising I'd follow up with him the next afternoon. He understood. I had met Kathy years earlier while working at a newly constructed auto plant, where I was contracted to handle maintenance and testing on an upcoming assembly line. I had programmed the system and was in the middle of debugging and adjusting it before the final handoff to the plant. It was there I was introduced to Kathy, a pretty woman who seemed to be around my age. She was introduced as Kathy Chalmers, the company liaison and engineering assistant. I was told she'd be working with me and the acceptance engineer during the debugging phase of the installation. Kathy was not afraid to get into the guts of the checkout process. When I was adjusting sensors, she was right there to hand me tools or provide an extra hand when needed. We talked as we worked, and I found out that she was 21 to my 22. She did not have a man in her life, and I did not have a lady friend. I found she liked, of all things, to play cards. She liked contract bridge, for-handed pinnacles, and canasta. She also liked the theater, hiking, and fishing. The debugging and adjustments took the better part of a week, but because of the help I received, that was more than a week less than planned. When I presented the final report to the plant and production managers, I praised them for the excellent help they had given me as well as the cooperation of their entire group. I made a special point to ask if I could personally thank Ms. Chalmers, as she was instrumental in the early finish. I was shown to her office by the production manager, and he left. I thanked Kathy and asked if she would like to meet me after work for a supper or a drink. She asked where and what time. We agreed on a time and went to a little mom and pop restaurant that was a few blocks from the plant. During that first date, I found out she also enjoyed poker and dancing. We dated exclusively for the next year. We were regular partners at a local card room. We went to plays, dances, and dinners. On Valentine's Day, about 13 months after we started dating, I proposed to her and she accepted. The wedding was originally planned for the following June, but the planning got a little out of hand. We finally got married on Valentine's Day, 1 year after we became engaged. The wedding was grand, and we honeymooned in Brazil. What a country of contrast. Rio was high-rises on the main street, and around the corner were slums. Prostitutes of both sexes, some as young as 10, were all over the streets. They would be there as early as 1 p.m. and still there at 2 a.m. I would never go back there. Sao Paulo was polluted and overcrowded. We still managed to have a good time. We had each other. After we had been married about 8 months, the company I had worked for was bought out and broken up. I was laid off and began looking for a new job. After about a month, I was hired by a company specializing in turnkey production facilities. I was given a huge raise over what I was making before, and for a guy under 25 and without a college degree, I was in high cotton. That job unfortunately required extensive travel, and that did not sit well with Kathy. We had many arguments about me not being there for her. She seemed to try to compensate by spending. Then we had arguments about money. I kept telling her that I did not make as much money as she spent. Twice she threatened to get a divorce, and both times I called her bluff. The first time she went away for a week. The second time, I settled her bluff by packing her stuff and showing her the door. She ran home to Mama and was told to go back and be a partner, not a complainer. She was also told that at 25 I was making more money than her father was at 55. I warned her that she had to control her spending and that I was actively seeking an inside job either with the current company or a new one. I also told her that the threat of divorce was her last threat. If she threatened it again, she would get her wish. Things got better and stayed that way for a long time. Kathy got pregnant just about the time I was offered a design position with the company I was working for. She was overjoyed with the regular hours and the extreme cutback in out-of-town trips. There were a couple a year, that was all. Kathy's pregnancy was a difficult one, and when Maria was born, we decided that there would be no more. I got snipped. Maria was a good child, and Kathy was a great and nurturing mother. I was just as clueless as any other father, and by the time she was walking, I knew I was defeated. That little smiling face was the ruler of my being. I was now third on the totem: Maria, Kathy, and Ben. We had a wonderful life, and after Maria was in school full-time, Kathy went to work at a different engineering firm as an administrative assistant. We did all of the kids' vacation stuff, Six Flags, Disney World, and others, but by the time Maria was 10, she would rather go to a museum, a classical music event, an art exhibit, or stage play than an amusement park. She was also a tomboy and was constantly helping with my tinkering. We had all of the little life dramas. I was laid off of a couple of different jobs, but always found new one or was called back quickly. Maria had most of the childhood diseases: measles, mumps, and chickenpox. She could not get the vaccines because she was allergic to eggs and egg products. Fortunately, she seemed to outgrow that when she hit puberty. She also had the usual cuts and bumps that all kids seem to get. She broke her arm when she was 7 by being pushed off of a swing while at recess in 2nd grade. She was proud of her cast. I was devastated when she went on her first date. It was a group of 3 girls and 3 boys going to a 7th grade dance, but I was sad to see my little girl was growing up. She would not be allowed to go on a single couple date until she was 16, but she went to all the school functions with a group of the same girls and rotating boys. There never seemed to be more than once or twice with the same boy. Life went on, and when our 15th anniversary was approaching, I got an inside sales job at the company I now work for. By that time, I had also gotten my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, so more design projects were also coming my way. The design projects were a sideline and done with my company's blessing. After I had been on the inside job for about 16 months, my current job was offered to me. As I was, and always would be, a roadie at heart, I took it. I turned out to be a good face-to-face salesman. The job caused a lot of complaints about my being away a lot. Then instead of threats of divorce, she started to use sex or withholding sex as a weapon. I told her that if that was what she thought, she needed to get out. If she thought that my earning money to provide for my family was worth wrecking our family, fine. I warned her that I wanted her, I loved her, and I would die for her. But now she was not worth one argument, so she needed to decide what was going to happen going forward. Then about 3 months later came the text message. I quickly checked out of my hotel room and reserved another for the next night. I loaded my car and left for home. I had about a 3-hour drive. I called my parents and Kathy's parents and told them I wanted to give Kathy a just because surprise and that I wanted them to be at my house at 10 p.m. I asked them to park in the street and not go into the house until I got there. They both agreed. I arrived a little after 10 o'clock. They were all in their cars waiting. We walked to the kitchen door and quietly walked into the living room. There was a pile of men's clothes folded in my chair. I pointed to the bedroom and made a quiet gesture with my index finger. We walked to the bedroom, and through the open door saw Kathy face down on the bed with a man having sex with her. Her face was buried in a pillow so she didn't see us. I went up and tapped the man on the shoulder, and when he turned I laid him out cold with the right hand to the chin. It sounded like I might have broken some teeth. I also broke 2 bones in my hand. Kathy's head came up, and before she saw me, she saw our parents standing in the doorway. Her mother was crying on her dad's shoulder. My mother had her hand over her mouth, and my dad had a look of total disgust on his face. Surprise. I said, that selfie was a great thing to see on my phone. You need to drag this a hole? No, wait. I'm the a-hole, this sorry maggot face, and you, out of this house. I continued. I'm glad you think your loving daughter was a mistake, because you won't need to see her much after the divorce. You had better start getting dressed and remove this garbage from here before I really get pissed. Kathy started wailing and saying it was nothing, just a big mistake. I shot back. Just as big a mistake as your 15-year-old daughter? Or was it just a mistake that you sent me the naked selfie instead of this piece of shit? Which was it? This was not the first time either, was it? How long have you and this a-hole here been screwing behind my back? Is he the only one? Or are there a whole string of them out there? Kathy reacted as if I slapped her to each question. She didn't answer any of them. Maggot face was coming around, and Kathy realized that she was naked. She pushed past our parents and ran into the bathroom and slammed and locked the door. Maggot Face finally joined the waking world, and when I stepped out of the way, bolted for his clothes in the living room. He took less than a minute to put his pants on, grab the rest of his clothes, and leave. His car squealed out of the driveway and down the street. The parents left the bedroom area, but my dad whispered in my ear that he had a short video of the scene before I punched a hole out and after Kathy saw all of us. I thanked him for his forethought and asked him to send it to me by email. I thought that I might need it for the lawyer. My parents left, and Kathy's mother shooed us all out into the living room and went in and helped Kathy pack some stuff. Her mom informed all of us that she was taking Kathy to their house for a few days. Just until things settled down, she said. I called my boss and told him a sanitized version of what happened. He said he would send an engineer up to the job I was on, and for me to take all of the time I needed to deal with the problem. He had been shafted by a cheating wife and did this for all of his employees, male or female. I called the customer early the next morning and told him of the changes. Maria came home just about the time I had gotten the mattress and box spring out into the yard. I had already thrown the sheets, pillowcases, and blankets into the trash. She had a knowing look on her face. She said, "Sorry, Dad. I wish I had told you that I suspected that Mom was messing around, because about every second time you took a trip to a customer site, she would arrange for me to go somewhere for a sleepover. This was about the fourth time." She continued. "She hasn't been very nice to me for the past year or so. Not really mean, just not caring what I wanted or needed. I don't know if she started to screw around then, or if it started later, but when you divorce, I want to stay with you," she added. "I know you have to occasionally go out of town overnight, but I talked to your Aunt Mary, my mother's sister, a spinster, and she said she could come and stay for a couple of days when needed. I knew that if you found out, it would mean the end of the marriage." I spent the next day closing all of the credit card accounts, locking down the bank accounts except for automatic payments, and putting all of my video and email evidence in a safe deposit box. I took my private stash money and got a couple of debit cards, one for Maria and one for me. They were daily limit cards, $500 a day for me and $50 for Maria. Maria had her own savings, but I would not let her touch that except in an absolute emergency. I did not worry she was going to suddenly go out and start burning through money, and she didn't. I also contacted a lawyer and started the divorce. Adultery is a felony in our state, seldom enforced, but still on the books. So, I had the lawyer make up 2 sets of papers, one for irreconcilable differences with Kathy relinquishing custody and all claims to any of my go-to-hell money or property, and one for adultery and those to be held over her head to sign the first. It turned out that Roger was a new, young, 12 years younger than Kathy, working as an engineer at Kathy's firm. He ended up with a dislocated jaw, 3 broken teeth. He was also fired when I filed a lawsuit against the company. He tried to come after me for assault, but his wife warned him that she would financially wreck him in their divorce if he continued to pursue me. The company settled the suit for a medium bucket of money, and at my insistence, Kathy kept her job. Someone, I think Kathy's mother, convinced her to fight the divorce and request counseling. I changed the reason for adultery and refused to go to counseling. I spent a weekend in jail before Kathy withdrew the objections and the divorce was granted. The judge was not real pleased with Kathy or her lawyer, so he gave me the house, custody, all of my go-to-hell money, and 75% of the savings and checking. We each kept our own retirement accounts, and my profit sharing was split 90-10 me. No alimony, no child support. As I had the house and I received custody with Maria's request. It was just the end of a marriage. Kathy was allowed unlimited visitation, but she could not take Maria overnight or out of the county without court permission. About a year after the divorce, Kathy asked to sit down with me. She apologized for the pain she had caused and said she didn't fully understand why she'd done what she did to our family. She told me she had requested, and been granted, a transfer to an office in another state. As a result, she would only be seeing Maria a few times a year. However, she promised she would be there for the big events, birthdays, graduation, and the wedding. For the first year, she kept her word. But after that, it was just cards, birthday cards with money, graduation cards with more money. Maria never cashed the checks. She told me that if all her mother thought she was worth was a piece of paper, then she didn't want to lose that paper. I laughed when Maria said it, and she smiled, knowing that I understood the weight of what she meant. Kathy never showed up for Maria's wedding or the births of her grandchildren. Her parents, however, were always loving grandparents and treated me well. They later told me that Kathy had asked them not to share any family news with her. It seemed that updates about the family caused her a lot of pain. Kathy never remarried. She passed away at 50 from complications related to diabetes and personal neglect. About 5 years after the divorce, I sold a particularly complex piece of software that brought in a small fortune, enough to make early retirement a reality. I officially retired at 50. At 54, I met and married a lovely widow, and we moved to Florida to escape the harsh winters. Tampa was, and still is, a great place for seniors. Now, my daughter's family visits every other year for 2 weeks over Christmas, a couple of weeks during spring break, and occasional weekends. I get to spoil the grandkids, give my beautiful daughter big hugs, and enjoy the company of the wonderful man she married. They're fantastic parents. Life is much better now. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.